Optics do not make you a better hunter. So I want to talk about optics today. I haven't touched on optics for a couple years really. I did an optics video a couple years ago and I just went through some of my top picks, and I'll get to those later on in this video. What I really want to stress initially is first, start where you can afford. Vortex lower lines I think are the best. I think Nikon has some good offerings in that price range. Leupold is kind of third tier, but I think Vortex overall is the best option for that lower end $200 to $500 pair of binos. I think they really are quality for what you're buying. I feel like you can go and get it and use a pair of those on an elk hunt and be absolutely successful. I'm just using Diamondbacks as a reference point because I think everybody understands what I'm talking about. What makes the difference between some of these binos is having a tripod. The approach that you use behind the glass is more important a lot of times than the actual glass, because I hunt with a lot of people from all over the optics range. I mean, some of my guides and guide buddies that I work with, clients, everything. I see every kind of optic out there. And the guys that are most successful are the guys that have the right approach when they're looking behind a pair of binos or a spotting scope. Because I can tell you this, if you know what you're looking for, if you're dedicated and you're willing to find it out behind glass, you can make whatever you need to make work if you have a structure behind it. If you have a tripod, a good setup, a good overall approach to what you're doing, how you're looking at it, where you're looking at it, where you're focusing your time. It's like 90% of the animals are in 10% of the country, especially certain times of day. So in other words, all the elk may be out in the morning, but as soon as that sun's up and as soon as it gets hot, they are in timber pockets that are covered in shade. Essentially just 10% of what all that country that they live in, they're in 10%. So as a hunter, your focus has to be more important than your glass, especially if you can't afford a $3,000 pair of binos. If you focus on the right areas and understand habits and patterns, that will make you successful. Work with what you have. Okay, so working with what you have is Diamondbacks. Let's go up a level. Let's go Mavens and Razors. I don't like any Leupold binos, to be honest with you. So when we're talking about that Razor level, we're talking about the Maven, whatever their line is. I'll throw it up on the screen what I'm talking about. But that mid-range, kind of like you're bumping up, you've hunted for a couple years, you want to take it seriously. Maybe you drew a really good tag, or maybe you're planning a big hunt and you want to set yourself up for success. That mid layer is fantastic. I would really, this is where the magic happens, in my opinion. When you graduate from the Diamondback or the Nikon Pro Staff or Monarch, whatever you're glassing with, and you get into that real money type category, that real $1,000 type category, whatever, give or take a couple $100, that's where you're putting in some serious investment into what you're doing, and you're going to need a decent tripod that's going to be with you, that's going to hold these binos securely, and you're really investing into your hunting world. And it's this level that is a big jump in quality and overall clarity, brightness, low light conditions, all of the little things that you're really gonna notice this jump. You're really gonna notice the jump between Diamondbacks and Razors, between Diamondbacks and Zeiss, Diamondbacks and Maven. You're going to notice a big jump there. And you also have more categories to choose from. You can choose a really quality pair of 15s or 12s or 10s that really fit the bill to give you a good option for hunting and staying behind glass. And I have honestly looked behind a pair of binos well over 10,000 hours. I've spent the last 15 years on a tripod. And even in places where that was not even a thing yet, like Alaska, guys in Alaska early on in my guiding career, I would bring up 15s and tripod and all this stuff, and guys were like, what in the heck is he doing? And the whole point of it is you just want to be able to see more, see better. The more you see, the more options you have, and it also helps the hunt. If you know things are around, they may not be attainable they may be too far away to actually go after, but you know they're in the area, they know you're in the country, or you can plan to go approach that area where you saw them way too far off that you may have not seen with your 8 power. The category between the low end to mid grade is the biggest. You will 100% notice it, and you will 100% not regret that purchase. It's the leap from the $1,000–$1,500 pair of binos to the $2,500 to $3,500 pair of binos that some people can find almost diminishing returns because time behind glass factor. So for me and for guides and for hunters that spend a ton of time behind glass, it is worth it. You do notice a difference, but for guys that, and I've noticed this firsthand, from guys that go from the Razor line to Swarovski or Leica, they go, yeah, I can't really tell a difference. I don't really understand. I know they're supposed to be the best. These are $3,200. I don't, and they start comparing them. And so you don't really see a jump with guys and hunters that don't spend half their life behind binos. So that's what, to me, if you have the disposable income to buy the best, to buy the Swarovski with the built-in rangefinder, the Swirl-Vision, NL Pures, I really think Swarovski is the top of all categories. I personally use Leica binos because that's what I like. I use the range finding 15s and the range finding 10x42s. However, I am the first to tell you that the Swarovski EL range is the best. They have better glass, and the rangefinder is super high end, and it's just a better pair of binos. They are more expensive. I just am accustomed to what I like, what I know, and little things separated. I kind of like the feel of the Leicas a little bit better. It's very nuanced differences that I prefer the Leica binos to the Swarovski. I don't think Zeiss is, with their range finding bino, is really close in, they're the third tier. They might be with Leica in that category, range finding binos, but they're really expensive, and I haven't seen or heard any good reviews from anybody that's read them. Everybody that buys them wants to sell them immediately. They're really heavy. They're just not really worth the price tag. That's what I've seen. I see a lot of binos coming through back and forth, exchanging hands. So to get to my point, get in, if you can get into that category of that mid-range bino and or spotting scope. I'm gonna get to spotting scope next, but in that mid-range bino, that Razor $1,500 range, you can stay there for a long time. You can stay there for 10 years. And this is how upgrades happen. I hate to warn you, but don't look through some of these binos that cost $3,000 more than yours and not have extreme jealousy when you look through those. That's how all upgrades basically happen. Where I go, hey man, let me borrow your binos for a little bit. Let me borrow these for an afternoon. And I go, oh man, these are definitely better than the ones I'm using. So that's when you can tell when you spent a ton of time behind that mid-range bino, and then you pick up a pair of high-end ones, and then you can tell the differences because of the time you spent behind those mid-range binos. And those differences may not warrant $2,000 more. They may not warrant you going out and buying a whole nother pair. So that's something that you'll have to decide. 10x42s or 12s are the best way to go in any category. I like 15s. To me, the most versatile pair of binos. If you're only gonna have one pair of binos, 15s are the only thing you'll need. And I'm talking about when you only have one pair of binos, meaning you do not have a spotting scope. And when I'm talking about optics, I'm talking about glassing big country, elk country, mule deer country, Coues deer country, Alaska, everything. We are all looking for that silver bullet. You can actually identify trophies at a longer distance than you can 12s. 12s are better than 10s, but 15s give you that, almost that like spotting scope for a glimpse. Your eyes can use those 15s and really get an accurate depiction of what that animal actually is as far as trophy judging. So that's kind of where I'm at. You're always in a position, if you're looking at something far away or even close. I mean, we're talking about maybe a moose at 150 yards that's moving in some brush. You always want like that it really matters, that the importance of seeing and identifying a tine or a width or something like that really matters, you always want a little bit more. And the drawbacks are, okay, they're heavier, they're bigger, I need a tripod, all that kind of stuff, and that's great. I carry mine on my chest. I freehand with 15s. I've always done that, but I have gone back from 12s, or I have gone back from 10s and 15s. But if I'm only going to go out with like rolling lightweight, if I'm hunting maybe thicker timber, because I like 15s even in the thick stuff. When you guys say, oh, like 8s are fine. Yeah, but what about it when you see that elk that's bedded in the timber where you're like still hunting, you're kind of just moving tree to tree, and you're like, is that what I think it could be? And you're like, man, I wish I had like a little bit more optic behind there, and you're moving real slow and steady. So even in short glassing opportunities, 15s to me are the best for identifying animals. They are not the best for low light conditions. They're not the best for picking game up. They have a narrow field of view. There are a lot of things that come into play, and I've gone back and forth with this too. Like I've had 15s on my chest for years, and then I went to 10s for years, and then I just recently went back to 15s for the last couple of years, because in the end I always found myself going, man, I just want to throw my binos up real quick. I want just a little bit better look, and they are a little heavier. If you only have one pair of binos, to me, go 15s. Go a nice pair of 15s. That will cover you. You will complain about the weight, you'll complain about the narrow field of view, but you will not complain about picking up animals, seeing animals better. You can phone scope out of 15s pretty good. Like you can do some stuff with 15s that 10s you just don't quite have that ability to do so. I am always a proponent of range finding anything, range finding binos. Leica makes 10s fit in 15s. Swarovski makes 10s. The Vortex makes 10 by 42 range finding binos that literally, that range finding pair of binos, the Vortex Furies, can put out a range of stuff that I'm like, dude, it's like 3,000 yards away and it'll come back. Leicas don't do that. Mine don't do that. So I was really impressed. I know Sig's got some range finding 10s and whatever. So there's some really good glass now that 5 to 10 years ago, mainly 5 years ago, they were just starting to creep on the scene, just starting to like get into that range finding binos, and you know, the lower tier, that mid-range tier of bino, that wasn't an option. Now it is. So I would strongly suggest you go 10 by 42 range finding bino or a 15 by 56 straight bino, depending on what you want to do. There's a lot of different things we can go into with that, but if you're going to choose one and you do not have a spotting scope, 15s. If you want to choose one pair of binos and you do have a spotter, 10 by 42s. So that's what I did for years, because we'll go into the next segment of spotting scopes. Is what I have is the Swarovski BTX, and I have an 85 millimeter, and that to me is the best all around. So I think the 85 is good with the zoom as well, so it gives you that, it's like 30 power, where the 65 is light and small, but you're giving up a lot of light in low light conditions. It doesn't zoom as much. The doubler doesn't really do that much. It really gets very dark. And then the 95 is bigger, it's pretty dark, and then the 115 is amazing. It's the best thing you can have, but it weighs 50 pounds. I'm exaggerating, but that's how it feels like if you're backpacking in. So to me, the 85 is the best that I've experienced. Spotting scopes are a little different. You kind of want to be choosy with spotting scopes. You want to start at that. You don't want to start really at that low range. You don't want to start at the Diamondback kind of range. You just really are not going to see what you need to see. So it's, to me, it's, if you're like trying to decide between getting a pair of binos and a spotter, or trying, you know, maybe you can't afford two, get a higher end pair of binos and leave the spotter for your next upgrade. So that's my opinion, is that you start with a good pair of binos and then you upgrade to a decent spotting scope, which to me is the same range as those binos. So Vortex Razor, Maven spotter, there's a lot in that price range that are great. don't waste your money on the lower end stuff. They are truly a waste of money. You're not going to use them. They're very dark. They're blurry. On full power, you're not going to be happy, especially if you're trying to phone scope things. So if you're going to go with a spotter, I always say 60 power. Get a mid-range $1,000 to $2,000 spotter. I'm throwing up some stuff that are good examples of what I'm talking about. If we're talking about being able to take that next step into not only identifying animals, but being able to film, phone scope, do some stuff like that where you can keep it with you, go over it, really look at some detailed pictures of animals when you're scouting and even in the midst of a hunt. There's a big difference on the highest power. So you'll notice on the mid-range scopes, they'll go from 50 power is pretty good, and then you want to crank that extra 10 magnification and dark, blurry, bad and low light. You get on an ATX, which to me is the best spotting scope that is out there. That, like the Swarovski ATX, whatever objective you have, 85, 95, 115, and the same as STX. S is straight, A is angled. It's the Swarovski spotting scope. To me, that is the clearest, brightest, best edges in low light conditions spotter that I have looked through. And that translates into getting some amazing footage where it looks like you're using some kind of crazy Canon lens like those guys at Planet Earth use. That Swarovski scope is the best. Zeiss makes amazing scopes that are in that category, in my opinion. And then Leupold and Leica are kind of that second tier below as far as the Euro optics go. They're kind of that second tier. And then you have the Vortex razors, like I was mentioning, is that kind of that mid-range, very expensive still, but that mid-range where you're in the game, you're glassing, you're gonna find stuff. It's a quality spotter that's gonna help you and bring a huge advantage to your phone scoping and also just identifying animals. So one of the things with the BTX, I go back and forth with the BTX with a lot of guys, and it's really amazing to look at stuff far away for a long period of time. The pirate eye syndrome, where you're doing this all the time with a spotter, waiting for animals to turn their heads. You're hunting antelope and you're just like, you're staring at these goats for hours, or you're looking at these elk or whatever it is. It's way more comfortable with the BTX for sure. The problem with the BTX is that the phone scope capabilities are not going to be quite as good. Even with the doubler, it's darker. You just don't get as good of phone scope footage with the BTX as you would a straight spotting scope, ATX or BTX or ATX or STX. I have had both. I've had run side-by-side comparisons on my own equipment, because I used to actually carry an ATX ocular piece as well with my BTX, and I'd find something cool, I'd switch them out. Then it just became too much weight. It was just like a liability to them. Like, I'm carrying like $15,000 of optics in my pack all the time. If you have the disposable income or you do this for a living, the BTX is amazing. That you're not going to regret that, but there's a huge price tag that accompanies the BTX, and you'll have to set up your hunting style to kind of accommodate that. So when I'm hunting with my BTX, I'll usually wear 10s, because I'm like, if I'm going to sit down and glass off a tripod, I'm using my BTX. I'm not using my Binos. I'm not using my 15s. Obviously you can in certain situations, but you'll really want to set it up to where anything you do off a tripod is with your BTX. Where if you have 15s and a spotting scope, you're rolling tripod to 15s 90% of the time, and then switching when you have to with a spotter to get some footage, get some identification. So that's my take, guys, on doing a lot of glassing in a lot of different environments with elk, coos deer, also Alaska, brown bears, moose, different kinds of country, swamps to desert to heavy thick timber to rolling big junipers to all kinds of stuff. So I hope this helped. Here's the kicker. Optics do not make you a better hunter. Having Swarovski equipment, optics, will not equate to you actually killing more animals. Okay, this is the foundation of my point here, and this video is that here's the secret. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The approach and you developing as a hunter, understanding patterns, limitations, wildlife, you being hunting and in the woods more often, And obviously getting advice and maybe going with a guide or doing these things to help your game, to me, that's way more important than the optics that you have. I know a lot of guys that are awesome hunters that have terrible binos, and they kill bigger things, trophy animals, or they kill more frequently than guys do with the latest and greatest equipment that money can buy. So focus on your game first. Focus on your hunting approach. Focus on what you need to improve as a hunter. Focus on what makes you a better hunter. When you have a good grasp of that, make the optics work for you, and that will only increase your capabilities. So that's kind of where I'm at, guys. I don't think it matters. I don't think it really matters at all, because I think if you give me a pair of Vortex Diamondbacks that are scratched up, or someone that's been guiding or that does this for a living, I will take those and I will utilize them, and I will be successful because I'll put myself in the right position to utilize my glass according to my capabilities and according to the terrain and what I can do. That's the approach you have to take. So don't always have envy over equipment, the latest rifles, that longer range stuff, or all this stuff. We can get so carried away in gear when it doesn't actually matter. Get a good pair of binos, get a tripod, get a decent pack, and focus, invest in your time and your energy and your knowledge of hunting the animal that you're trying to hunt, of understanding your quarry. So good luck, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. And I just want to encourage everybody that we do have an inner hunter inside of us. Tap into that instinct, tap into that intuition as a hunter to get the animal, butcher the animal, and eat the animal. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. See ya.